All right. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be hearing from David Carnes about reporting and during a crisis, and how that can be an effective tool in, benefiting your organization moving forward. Throughout the presentation, we'll have a number of polls that we invite you to take part in. You can enter them as they appear on the screen, and there will also be a Q&A section at the very end. So we invite you to enter any and all questions that may come to mind throughout the presentation. The session will be recorded, and it will be made available in a follow-up email that we'll send out as soon as the webinar comes to a close. With that being said, I'd like to go ahead and introduce David. He is the CEO of OpFocus and an expert in Salesforce, holding an impressive 8 certifications. He's spoken on reports and dashboards at a number of events around the world, including Dreamforce, Dreamin' events, as well as Salesforce Camp Success events, which are currently ongoing. With that being said, I will go ahead and turn things over to David to get us started.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kyle. It's so great to see so many friendly names on the attendee list, so thank you for joining us. Just a quick note about OpFocus. So we're based in the US and Canada. We've got folks scattered around both countries. We help companies with strategy and architecture for the go-to-market tech stack. We do consulting on marketing operations, on business operations. We do CPQ implementations and optimizations. We've got a team of developers. We write code. And in general, we just have a great time doing what we do. To address the who is OpFocus and what sets us apart, 3 years ago, we made a decision to just really double down on SaaS, and describing us as SaaS obsessed might be pretty accurate. I think what's been really fun is focusing on growth and helping companies scale their tech stacks and sales processes, data, and reporting. So why don't we get started? The idea behind this, I think, is probably pretty obvious. A lot of us have faced a different level of scrutiny recently, whether it's board level involvement, a lot of questions about what's changed, how can we identify trends in what's going on within our sales in particular. So many of us have had to reforecast. For some of us in health tech, we've had to reforecast in a sort of a different than expected way. Certainly companies like Zoom have had to reforecast as well. For the rest of us, in just trying to understand what's going on, can we make sense of it? We're also being asked to do this without any new tools. So don't spend any money, and please give us a lot more reporting. So this is where the idea for this session came, and sort of this theme of like, what can we do with what we've got? So we've got Salesforce, and I know that many of us don't take advantage of all the features that are available. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about first, just setting the stage for reporting. A lot of you have moved to Lightning in the last 1 or 2 years. There are features that may not be turned on in your instance. There are permissions that may not be set. So we'll take a look at those. And then we'll get into the main set of questions. So in our teaser for the webinar, we listed out 7 questions, and we're going to go in and address those, essentially assessing your pipeline, staying on top of change, predicting sales success, prioritizing sales resources, looking at sales trends. I attended a session at Dreamforce a couple of years back on the number of ways you can do trending in Salesforce. I'm going to highlight a few of them. Then we'll just talk about the sales cycle impact. There's a bit of plumbing we have to do for that. Finally, another question that seems to be on people's minds is just understanding where deals are dying at this point, and how can I tell how it's different from pre-corona lockdown. So finally, we'll do some wrap up and have some and address some questions. All right, so setting the stage for, thank you, Kyle, for putting so as we get started, just the thought of asking, like, what are you currently using for reporting? So Salesforce reports, Salesforce dashboards, have you made an investment in a BI tool? And whether you're using Excel for reporting as well. So just a quick poll to
We'll give it 5 more seconds here.
All right, looks like most are using reports and dashboards. Half have invested in a BI tool, and 60% are pulling data into Excel. What's interesting about this, I feel like I have to fight the good fight with CFOs to try to get an investment in a BI tool, a proper BI tool, earlier. But I do a lot of speaking and thinking on reports and dashboards, and definitely want to focus on that for this session. But it is a very valuable investment for companies. And in one sense, I don't really care what tool that you invest in, just that you have another tool that allows you to report across systems and do more interesting kinds of reporting. All right, so setting the stage for reporting. Something that a lot of people don't realize is that Salesforce with each release is introducing beta features. And if we go into the report and dashboard setup, some of these features require activation. And if we look in a system here, I'm under setup, feature settings, analytics, reports and dashboards, and then report and dashboard settings. And you can see here, there, interestingly, at this moment, there aren't any beta features, but when the summer release comes out in July this year, there will be a beta feature, and it'll be a checkbox. If you use report subscriptions, do you want a file attachment attached to the report subscription? And that's a new feature. You'll need to check a box to turn it on. There's another one here that I think is a good one for people. It's actually to hide the embedded Salesforce Classic report builder in Lightning. So many of you, when you look at your tab, the reporting tab in Lightning, you have 2 new report buttons. There's a new report button for the Lightning report builder, which we'll use today. And then there's another one that says Salesforce Classic. And you can hide that. There's no reason to look at it. It's a very strange sort of amalgamation. I would prefer to hide it at this point. So just a couple of things here. We're going to talk about historical trending. It's very easy to turn this on. For opportunities in particular, you click on opportunities, check the enable historical trending, click save. From that moment on, this feature is activated. 2 other features that we'll talk about: report types. It's important to understand that these are the foundation for reports, and you can have an admin or somebody who's been given the appropriate permissions create report types. I'll also talk about reporting snapshots. This is a great way to do trending. It requires a little bit of plumbing, and I'll talk about that in a bit, but this is where we can actually schedule the reporting snapshot. Something else that I feel fairly passionate about is reporting permissions. I feel so passionate that a year ago I wrote a blog for Salesforce on how to think about reporting permissions. Out of the box, only 4 out of 31 report and dashboard permissions are assigned out to standard users. So what I've done in this blog article is suggested 5 different types of users or categories of report users: end users, managers, report and dashboard super users, report and dashboard admins, and then finally sysadmins. And I've made suggestions on where the 31 permissions should be assigned. One really important example of this is the ability to subscribe to dashboards. In the 4 out of the box, people can subscribe to reports, but in Lightning, they can't subscribe to dashboards unless you give them that permission. There are some other interesting ones that I've highlighted in this blog article. All right, so that's setting the stage for reporting. Let's get into the questions. So one of the questions is, how quickly can we assess our pipeline and then step through as many variations as we can think of? Something that I like to encourage people to consider is using a matrix report. Aside from having sort of a cool name, it really gives us a great bird's eye view of what's going on in the system. You can see here in the screenshot that I've grouped by industry. I'm grouping rows by industry, and I'm grouping the columns by stage. I've also filtered this report to only show open opportunities. Another variation of this same thing would be to look at this by sales rep. And you might need to make a decision, especially during this time, on, does one sales rep stay? Does another one not stay within the company? You might consider what they have in their pipeline, where they are with their progress in sales as part of that decision. I've also added in conditional formatting here. This is a feature that as soon as you add your first grouping on a report, down in the bottom right-hand corner. So if you add your first grouping and then you do at least one summary row, So in this case, I've added my first grouping on industry, and then I've also summed the amount. And that's revealed the conditional formatting down in the bottom right-hand corner. And you can have up to 3 different summary columns with these colors. They don't have to be red, yellow, green. You can choose other colors. I've just left them red, yellow, green. But it's kind of a powerful way to look at a system. On the reports tab in Lightning, if I go ahead and click the new report button and create a new report on opportunities, so I'm choosing this report type. There are quite a few others, and we'll talk about other ones in the list during this session. But for now, I'm just going to choose opportunities, click continue. I can come in here and just clean up my filters quickly. And what I want to look at when I look at Open Pipeline is all close dates stretching out into the future, and then opportunity statuses of open. Now that I've cleaned up my filters, I'll go to the Outline tab. I'm going to sum the amount column, and then I'm going to add my first grouping. And as soon as you add your first grouping, a couple things happen. So the Add Chart button wakes up at the top. As soon as we add our first grouping, down at the bottom, the toggle switches become active. Because I've added a grouping and I have at least one summary column, the conditional formatting option is here as well. I'm going to go ahead and just group by columns now. And this is how we create the matrix report. And this is feeling a little bit busy. I'm gonna hide the row counts. And I'm gonna go ahead and run this, and we can see by industry what the dollar amounts by stage are. I can go ahead and save this, and maybe I come back in here, edit the report, create another variation of it. Maybe this one, I'll create a variation by sales owner. So the opportunity owner, and I'm going to remove the industry in this case. And maybe I run it and look at each of my sales reps the same way. Maybe I want to look at sales region. Maybe I want to look at some other thing of it, like new versus renewals. So it's a really nice way to just get a bird's eye view. If you have a brand new head of sales, this is the thing I'd want to have on their desk the first day they show up, because they're going to want to know what's open. So I think this is a really nice sort of powerful tool. 2 other things to point out. In the Lightning reporting, when you've run the report, a feature that a lot of people often miss is that you can actually click on one of these. So I'm looking at Bruce Kennedy's under needs analysis. I can click on that, and the data is filtered down below for Bruce Kennedy and needs analysis. I can go ahead and click clear to undo it. I mentioned conditional formatting. If I wanted to add conditional formatting, I could come back into the edit environment, click on conditional formatting, add a conditional formatting rule, and I could specify. So let's say that if it's below 1.5 million, it should be red, and if it's below 2.5 million, it should be yellow. Like that's orange, but I won't argue. Let's go ahead and click apply, and you can see this is immediately added. I do want to encourage one last thing. This is the preview pane. Do not make business decisions based on the preview pane. Go ahead and run the report, and you'll see the actual data being displayed. So it actually wasn't that much different. But this person admin user is just red all across. They probably shouldn't own any opportunities. But if I look down, I can start to see patterns in the data. All right, so let's talk about staying on top of change. This one thing has been asked of me more times through the years. How can we stay on top of opportunity changes, both positive and negative, since last week? So it's the since last week. This is really valuable for a head of sales operations. They walk in the door on Monday. They're expected to know in detail what changed, which deals died, which deals had stage changes, which opportunity dates got pushed out, which dollar amounts fluctuated. This feature is not new. It does need to be activated. We activate it with a checkbox, and then we need a little bit of time to go by. But what this gives us is 3 months of history plus the current month. So essentially we have almost 4 months of data. And you can see here the color coding. And I'm seeing that the opportunity stage moved. So I show that in green. And I'm seeing that the close date actually was pushed out. So I'm showing that in red, and I'm showing the change on that column as well. We can do that for the amount column, the close date column, the stage column, the forecast category column. This is, it's very powerful. I mentioned how easy it is to turn this on. We just check a box under setup, and then you just need some time to go by. So we check the box, click save. Salesforce is automatically going to start tracking the changes on amount, close date, forecast category, probability, and stage. And just to show you a little bit what this looks like, once you've activated this, a new report type becomes available. So that first step of creating a new report, you choose the report type, and then you choose opportunities with historical trending. We're going to talk about these other three later on. Those are different. This feature, you will not see this choice if it is not active in your system. So that's that checkbox in setup, click save. Now suddenly the report type is here. You can see the report output here. And typically what I'll do is put the historical column just to the left of the now value. So I'll do that for stage, historical to stage now, historical close date to now, and amount. And if we want to, we have the ability to flip the reds and greens. So out of the box, the close date is actually reversed for most of us. We want deals to move in sooner, and that's good, that's green. So we actually want to format, just flip the format on that. We also have the ability to show the change if we want, and that's this column here. And we do that similarly with the pull down arrow. All right, let's talk about another question that we had. Can we predict which salespeople have the best shot at making their number? So Salesforce activated in all of our systems, well, they gave us the ability to activate in all of our systems a feature called Einstein Opportunity Scoring. So this has already been paid for. This is a free, I'm sorry?
Sorry.
Did you have a question?
No, my apologies. You were frozen on my end, but it may be my internet.
Okay. This is a feature that Salesforce decided to include for all of our instances that enterprise and above, starting in the spring 20 release. This is back in February. This calculates and displays a score from 1 to 99. And this displays this on opportunity records, list views, and you can see what it looks like on an opportunity record up here in the top right. If you hover over the score, it'll show you top positives. And I've included this from our own system just to show you a high success rate for opportunities at this stage. The opportunity has lots of activity. There's a high success rate for opportunities with the same value in a custom field, and the same is true for another custom field. So this is not just looking at a set of standard fields for Salesforce. This is looking at what you've built out in your system. This particular opportunity has the highest score, and there are no negatives listed. I find it really interesting to look at what are positives and what are negatives. But this feature, once it's active, we can see it on opportunity records. We can include it in list views. That's this screenshot here. We can actually sort a list view, so I can look at my open opportunities and sort this way. We can include it in reports. We can also display it on the forecast tab if you use that. I know one of you on this call has at least 4 different uses of the same forecast. So I'm thinking of you with this. So how can we take advantage of this? So we asked the question, can we predict which salespeople have the best shot at making their number? Well, what we might do, rather than grouping on all of the different variations, 39 opportunity score, 72 opportunity score, 65 opportunity score, what we might do on a report is use what's called a bucket column. So in this case, I've grouped everything below 50 into one lump. Opportunities that have a score between 50 and 80 in the second lump, and then opportunities that have a score of over 80 in the third category. And you can see what I've done is just I've created that bucket column, and then I'm displaying this on the report. And I have my opportunity owners here, John Smith, Mary Jones, Tina Smoot, and Warren. And I can see the deals that they have open organized by scoring. Just to point out, you know, there are a couple of interesting things that happen with this. So Salesforce is analyzing your data and making a prediction on the likelihood to close based on the data that's in the system. I'm just pointing out here on a particular opportunity that one sales rep has listed the opportunity at a 10% to close, whereas the opportunity score is 64 for that. So that's one of the highest in the in the system, but it just doesn't agree with the probability that the sales rep has listed. This other one is the highest probability, and it also has the highest score listed. So I really like this feature. One other thing to note about the feature, there is a simple setup in your under setup within Salesforce. So if you go under setup, Einstein sales, and there's an assisted setup, and literally it's a toggle switch to turn this on. Prior to doing this, there's actually an assessment to tell you whether you're a good candidate for this or not. And determining whether you're a good candidate, you want to have at least in the last 24 months, 200 won opportunities, 200 lost opportunities. You probably also want to have a bit of maturity in your sales process, maturity in the fields that you're requiring for sales. And I'd also say that you benefit from discipline. If your sales team is using Salesforce every week to manage their pipeline, reporting is done out of the system, one-on-one meetings are run out of the system, then you're probably going to benefit from something like this. It does take up to 48 hours. We've included a link here, and I'll just show you this page in Help. So this is the Einstein opportunity scoring page in Help, and it just walks you through what it is. And then there are a couple of other pages within Help, considerations for setting it up, and that sort of thing. All right. So we're also asked, how can we prioritize which pending deals to aim resources at? I always wondered this earlier in my career. I don't think many people know this, but I had a period of time where I was a sales engineer. And I always wondered, how are we getting assigned to things? Well, there is a feature that's been in Salesforce for quite a while, and it's gotten a little bit of an upgrade in Lightning, in my opinion. It's called joined reports. And one of the things you can do is you can combine up to 5 reporting blocks side by side. And in this case, I'm combining opportunities with products for won opportunities. And the next block is showing open opportunities. And then I've added a third block. And in this case, this organization is using cases. And I've created that third block to show priority 1 cases. I can look at this and tell you exactly which client should get all of the attention. It's this one, United Oil and Gas. They're our biggest client in history. They also have the most open opportunities, and they have 2 open priority 1 cases. It's a nice way. I think this is probably a simplistic example in one sense, but just to point out the power of joined reports, you can combine up to 5 blocks. When you use this, this has been hiding in plain sight.
David, it appears that your audio may have cut out.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, I'm not sure if I hit my microphone. That's funny. Sorry about that. So I was just saying about the joined reports. This has been hiding in plain sight. While looking at a report, while we're editing in Lightning, up in the top left corner, we can click the down arrow, choose either report, which is the default, or make it a joined report. Suddenly then we can add additional blocks, and that's what I've done here. I've basically added 3 separate reports into one report, and each one you can relabel, and then you can relabel the sections of columns. So that relabeling will appear in the columns, and I can expand and work on the columns for each one of the blocks. And the same is true for the filters. And you want to adjust the filters for each one and adjust the columns for each one. I really like this a lot. All right, let's talk about sales trends. And Kyle, when we were gonna, did we have a poll for this one?
Yes, sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay. So I'm just curious, do you do trending in Salesforce currently with reports and/or dashboards? Are you doing any trending using Salesforce functionality?
All right, we'll give it a couple more seconds here.
So there's quite a range here. Okay, it looks like half say yes, 39% no, 11% not sure. That actually feels about right. So I'm really pleased to see the number that have said yes. There's quite a range of sales trending possibilities within your Salesforce instance. I'm going to show you the simplest first, and we'll just go deeper and deeper into the swimming pool. This is very, very easy to do, what we're looking at here, and you can see the output on a report and the output, what it looks like on a dashboard for year over year trending month by month. And you can see that we've grouped January year over year, February year over year, March year over year, and we can see the columns up here. It looks like this screenshot was taken in one of my dev orgs back in April. So it's showing April sales and quite a drop off from the prior year. There's no setup required. What you need to do is create a report on opportunities, and you're going to group it twice on close date. And you can see here on the left-hand side, I've created a report on opportunities. You can see here the name of the report, month over month, sales by year. And I've got my close date, and I've also grouped it by close date a second time. You have to dig a little bit deeper to get the order of this correct. So on that first one, if I click on the down arrow at the top of the column header, I can choose to group dates by, and essentially the outer one is going to be calendar, month, and year. And the screenshot over here on the right, I've gone to the second close date column, and I've chosen to group dates by calendar year. So that gives us that month over month trend, and it's just a really easy way to just look at the history of your data. Is there any seasonality in your business? For whatever reason, we see some businesses that April and November are just rough. For whatever reason, maybe it's because of holidays in November in the United States, could be just other factors in their business. So another trending option is to use summary formulas. And I've gotten a bit deeper into the swimming pool here. I'm using a function that a lot of us sort of are hesitant to use. It's called PrivGroupVal. And this can be really useful. You can see here on this right-hand side, I've got opportunity sales grouped by closed month. So I've created a report on one opportunities, and I've grouped it by closed month, and I'm summing the amount. So February is 7.9 million, March is 11.5 million. And what I've done is I've added a summary column here that just does the math. 11.5 minus 7.9 is 3.553. And the way that I do the math is I create a summary formula. In this case, we're just literally subtracting from amount sum, we're subtracting the PrivGroupVal of the amount sum closed month. And so that first month, it'll be blank because we need essentially 2 months to be able to do the math. So you'll always have a blank in that first month with doing this. I've also got an example here just showing the percentage change. And obviously the math is a little bit different. So we're subtracting the previous group month from the amount sum, and we're dividing it by that previous amount. And that's going to show us that the growth from 7.9 to 11.5 is 45%. Just to show off, I also added conditional formatting on this column. So I really like this. I wish more people would take advantage of PrivGroupVal. Another option that we have in the system is to use a pipeline snapshot. So this is not a new feature. We've actually had one in the OpFocus system running for a decade now. Believe it or not, a decade. We've had this thing running. In this particular sample data set, I've got 52 weeks, and I'm just showing changes week to week by stage. And the sum, the top of the bar, is the dollar amount, and we can see the opportunity stages. And I've sorted by date ascending. So we're seeing each of the weeks, and we're grouping by week, calendar week. And then the second grouping is on stage for this, and also showing it ascending. And what that gives us is like the negotiation stage, the bottom of the funnel at the bottom of the chart, and the proposal stage, and then your top of the funnel pipeline type stages. So this particular set of data, the proposal stage is growing and growing as the weeks go by, and the pipeline has sort of the new pipeline has shrunk. So just to show you that we can take advantage of this feature, this requires some setup from an admin. And so this is called a reporting snapshot. There are 3 main ingredients: a source report, a custom object to populate each of the open opportunities you have. And then the third thing is the snapshot itself, which says, take the columns from this source report, put it into this object, field by field, what the mapping is, and then when to do it. And within a lot of organizations, if they meet on Monday to review pipeline, we'd probably run the snapshot Monday night at midnight. With this feature, like along with a few other features, you essentially need some time to pass. So if you set this up, you're not going to see anything week to week until a few weeks go by. So this is one of those things that sort of early in a project, we might actually just turn it on and let it run. Okay, so this does to create the custom object, it's either an admin or somebody with appropriate permissions, and also to define the reporting snapshot requires either that somebody be a system administrator or have appropriate permissions given to them. There is another feature. This is an older feature. I remember this all the way back in probably 2006. It's called Opportunity Trends. You can see here when you go to create a new report, this has been hiding in the list for years, this Opportunity Trends. What this does is this takes a snapshot of all of your opportunities as of the first day of each month. And there's no changing it. It just is what it is. The first day of each month, it takes a snapshot, and you can take advantage of this. If opportunities have been deleted, that history is gone. So you might remove the ability for people to delete opportunities. If they delete it by mistake and recreate it, all the history is gone. That's one reason why I shied away from this, and I prefer the last thing that I showed you, the reporting snapshot, because every week we're copying the data into another object. It feels more protected. Okay, so with this Opportunity Trends, it's available to you. There are a couple of nice powers to this, and what you're seeing is the historical value of prospecting, the historical value of qualification month over month. What's the total pipeline? What's the number of deals, et cetera. One of the things that I was really most excited to talk to you about and requires probably the most plumbing is answering the question on what's the sales cycle impact of all that's going on. So this is one of those things that we would have wanted to turn on maybe a year ago, set up and turn on a year ago so that we'd have the ability to use it now. But just to explain, what we do with this technique is to date stamp opportunity stage changes, and then to calculate the duration between stage to stage. We have a blog article that a gentleman on our team, Vincent, wrote. So that's at bit.ly/track_stage changes. I'll just pull that up here on the screen. And the article has a 24-minute video explaining how to do it. It talks about the problem, talks about the solution, and it actually offers a second solution as well for how to go put this together. So this is on the OpFocus website. I don't want to spend a ton of time on it because it's a lot of plumbing, but essentially what this gives us the ability to do is start to show averages. We might show averages by sales region or averages by sales rep and by sales stage. So we have a timestamp field for each one of the stages. Every time an opportunity moves, we put something in there using Process Builder. Separately, we also have formula fields. So each column essentially has a date stamp column, and so each opportunity stage has a date stamp and has a formula to do the math. If you're going to consider this, I strongly suggest as a best practice, do this after you update your sales methodology. So if you have a new head of sales coming in and she wants to implement a new sales methodology, I'd suggest making the changes to your sales methodology and then doing the plumbing work, because if you're changing around stage names and whatnot, that impacts the date stamp fields and the calculations. When you do first turn this on, we have another specific challenge, which is most of us already have a bunch of open pipeline. You can use field history to go identify old stage changes. There's a bit of work to do in Excel, but you can load the data into Salesforce. All right. One of the other questions I've been getting a lot is, where are deals dying? So where are they dying in the sales process, and has this changed from before the crisis? So we have two different doors we can go down. So door number one is a feature called Opportunity History. This has been turned on in your system and available for years. There is no required setup, and there are some special features that are available. Door number 2 is a feature that does require some setup. You can see here opportunity field history. And if your head isn't spinning from having all these different variations, you know, Salesforce over the years has given us a new feature, and a few years have gone by and they've given us another new feature, and they've given us more features, and they've kind of piled up as the years have gone by. So we do have some good choices, but it does take some time to figure out what these are. This one requires activation. You have to go into setup and turn on a feature to be able to use it. You also need some time to go by. And this is why I'm going to suggest that we use door number 1 for this, because there's no special setup required. So we're going to go create an opportunity report. We're going to choose this custom report type, opportunity history. And what we can do with that is do something like this. So we've skipped ahead a few steps, and we're looking at a dashboard. The chart on the right is showing us the percentage of deals dying from a particular stage since the start of COVID. So we're seeing deals dying at the qualification stage. They're just not getting much further than that. Prior to COVID, and this is the sort of the marker that I've been using is the quarters, Q2 and Q1, but you could identify it more precisely. Prior to COVID, we're seeing the negotiation stage, the proposal stage. That's where more deals are dying, and that seems to make sense. Something's changed in our sales process, and now the question is, well, how do we go do this? So I mentioned we want to leverage the opportunity history report type, and this report type has some special superpowers to it that I want you to be aware of. So Salesforce automatically logs changes to stage, close date, amount, forecast category, and probability. So we know that they're doing that. What Salesforce also gives us is they give us some special columns we can take advantage of, such as the from stage, stage change, stage duration, close date 2, last modified. We can see the from stage changed from to. So there's a couple of different things that we can do here. And we can use these as columns. We can use them as filters. We can use them in groupings. So in this case, what I'm using is this special field. Well, what was the value before? I know the value now. The value now is that the deal is dead. It's closed lost. So I put that in my filter. So the value is closed lost. I've also put in my filter that there was a stage change equals true. So the current value is closed lost. The stage change is true. I have another column I can take advantage of, which is the last stage change date. So I'm using that in my filter, saying it's in this time period. And then what I'm doing is I'm grouping on the from stage. So this is what it was before the stage changed, and it was prospecting or it was qualification, etc. Now I've done one extra thing here. I've layered on another summary formula because I'm more interested in the percentages than I am in the total number. You could just do this with the record count, but I think it's kind of cooler to do it with percentages. And so there's one extra step here, which is to add a summary level formula onto that report. And I've got the example here, the percentage deals dying from, and the output type is %. And I've just written a formula here that uses a parent group val function. So you thought you were just going to have a lazy Wednesday afternoon. Now we're getting into the really deep end of the swimming pool. I don't see a lot of people using this function, but it's super valuable. So we're going row count divided by parent group val of the row count. So basically what this is doing is saying, if I have 50 deals that have closed lost, and this has 5, that's going to be 10. So 5 into 50, 10% of that total. So that's what this math is doing here on that summary formula column. I always get really excited to use these parent group val and prev group val functions. All right. So just to do a recap before we get into questions, we talked about assessing your pipeline. We talked about using matrix reports for that. It's a really nice way of just figuring out what's going on right now. If I were in the private equity world, as I know some of you on the call are, and I needed to just look in and make sense of something that's going on, I'd probably create a matrix report showing whether it's by industry, by region, by sales owner, and then the opportunity stages, and filter it on open opportunities just to get a sense of that bird's eye view of what's going on right now. We talked about staying on top of changes and some different ways to do that. We used historical trending for that. We talked about predicting sales success and introducing opportunity scoring. We talked about prioritizing sales resources. We used a feature called joined reports. We talked about sales trends and a number of ways to do it. So I think, we could probably just do a webinar on that one topic. We spent some time on sales cycle impact, and I shared that we have a blog article on the website that explains the plumbing required to measure the movement from stage to stage. Finally, we talked about where are deals dying in our process, and we're using a special report type for that, the opportunity history report type, and it gives us some special fields such as what was the from stage, what's the to stage, when was the last stage date. We can use those in groupings and in filters. All right, so before we get to questions, just to share, we've got some upcoming events. So we've got office hours on Friday. So we'll have a follow-up email that'll go out after this session that'll share some information about that. If you have burning CPQ questions or just want to talk to the OpFocus CPQ team, you can join us for that. I'll be teaching my 5-day admin class, June 22nd to 26th. We still have availability for that. We'll be doing a go-to-market growth levers webinar on June 26th. We have a separate office hours for development and integrations on the 26th. In July, I'll be teaching the 2-day reporting workshop. And then we'll do another webinar focused on doing more with dashboards on July 22nd. So just to share some of the upcoming events. Just to add one more plug for the training, the admin course again is June 22nd to 26th. The reporting workshop is July 7th through the 8th. I've been doing this now. I'm about to hit my 15th year, start my 15th year of teaching on the platform. I know many of you that are attending today have taken a class with me over the years. So I try to teach about 3 times a year. So we'd love to have, if you have somebody on your team who might benefit. All right, Kyle, did we have any questions?
Yes, we had a number of questions come in. The first one that came in, what would you class as a proper BI tool?
Oh, great question. I've been using that word for a long time. It's going to sound funny, but I almost, in one sense, I almost don't care if as long as it can report across multiple systems. And that sounds like I'm a little too agnostic, but I kind of am. It's like, I'm just so happy if somebody's made an investment, and we'll help you take advantage of whatever tool you have. I know some folks on the call today have had great success with Power BI. Others have taken advantage of Einstein Analytics or Domo. Insight Squared is a really popular option for turnkey reporting. You basically connect it to your system and you get, you start to get an interesting set of reports that are available, plus some predictive capabilities. So, if you don't have anyone internally to help you set that up, you might consider going down the path of like an Insight Squared. If you have folks internally, I know some of the folks on the call are just rock stars on these different BI tools. You might consider another more sophisticated tool.
And so Claudia asks, can you add a historical trending report to a dashboard?
I feel like Claudia is setting me up for failure here. I think so. I believe if we can save it, we can put it on a dashboard. Yep. And of course, right after this call, Claudia, I'm gonna just make sure. So I love tinkering in the system and just making sure of stuff like that. But I'm pretty sure we can add that.
All right. Someone asks, it doesn't appear that historical trending is available on leads. Should we use history reports to track lead owners and scores instead?
Oh, that's a great point. So and I'm just jumping back into the system to share my screen. Historical trending is available on 3 standard objects and up to 3 custom objects, and that doesn't include leads. So, one of the things, there is a limitation to this functionality. So not only with the objects, but it's only giving you 3 months of changes. You could turn on field history tracking on the object. So if we go into Object Manager and we go to the lead object, up here in the top right on each one of the objects in Salesforce, when I click fields and relationships, we have the ability to set history tracking. You want to turn this on well before you need it. In this particular instance of Salesforce, it's not on, so I can't even use the lead, the field history report type on that object. I actually have to check the box, click save, but I also have to specify which columns that I want the history tracked for. You might choose things that change frequently, such as the lead status. If there's some other thing about the, the rating of the lead or some other classification of the lead that might change, you probably specify that for field history tracking. And then you could create a report using that field history so the field history report type on leads.
All right. Next question. Does the free opportunity scoring allow for the inclusion of custom fields in the AI model?
Yes. And so I had that in the screenshot just to jump back to it. And I was excited to share that example. This is an example from the OpFocus instance. We turned this on last year. And what you can see here, just sharing with you that we have a couple of custom fields on it. We have quite a few custom fields on our opportunity. Einstein picked up on 2 of them that was a positive reinforcer for the score. And so it's this project components field is not standard to Salesforce. The stakeholders field is not standard. We care about those within OpFocus, so we created custom fields. Absolutely. Just one other note about Einstein scoring. This really depends on your data. The more data you have, the longer you've been using Salesforce, the more won and lost opportunities you have, the less kind of crud in your system. So this gets into maturity and discipline. The discipline to use the system the same way each week, to use it for one-on-one meetings, to use it for forecasting, to use it for pipeline management. That will greatly increase your success with this type of feature.
All right, and that leads in nicely to this next question. About Einstein scoring, how are scores calculated? Also, I have several types of opportunities, new customers, renewals, etc. Does Einstein let me calculate scores for new customer opportunities differently than for renewals?
So this is a teaser product, and so the answer is no. It will do it on its own, but it'll use the same scoring algorithm for all opportunities, and it will say, oh, this is a renewal, so it's essentially going to do it on its own. But you can purchase the full-blown scoring, and you can create your own models and say what columns should be in or out. This Salesforce instance that I'm showing here doesn't have Einstein the scoring. It's a dev org, so it doesn't have it, so I can't really show it to you. So what Salesforce has done is given you a canned scoring based on standard and custom fields in your system. It will attempt to prioritize things, but you could pay for the more powerful scoring, and you can create your own scoring models. Before you do that, I'd actually encourage going on to Trailhead, and there are some Trailhead modules, the badges that you can do where you're actually playing around with that exact feature.
Thank you. Next question. About snapshots, that creates a record in the custom object for every opportunity every week or month, correct?
Yes.
That seems like a lot of data when all I really want is the amount for each stage each week. Is there a way to store aggregated data rather than separate records for each opportunity?
Oh, yes. I feel like somebody's giving me a softball, whoever asked that question. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, absolutely. So here's an interesting thing that I didn't share with source reports. I actually answered a question on the Salesforce Trailblazer community, this same question the other day. So basically, if your source report has a grouping, then what you're passing into the analytic snapshot or the reporting snapshot is summarized data. If your source report has no groupings, it's just rows, that is what's going to be passed into the reporting snapshot. So it's interesting. It all depends on that source report. I would suggest only include the columns that you intend to snapshot. Don't include a bunch of extra columns. Just make it very specific. I would suggest putting that report into create a folder called system reports, make it view only. Do not let anybody change those reports in that folder. Create your report, include only the columns you need, and store it in that folder, but then also make that decision, do you add a grouping or not? If you add a grouping, then you're only going to be able to snapshot summary data. If you have no grouping in the source, you'll snapshot the individual records.
All right.
Was there a second half to that question?
No, I believe that covered most of it.
Okay.
The next question is around Vincent's blog. So what's the advantage of Vincent's solution over standard Salesforce report options, trending history, etc.? What additional questions does this answer?
Yeah, so this gets into duration and calculations of duration. We need some kind of a stamping mechanism to do that. And so I've seen it done a couple of different ways. Believe it or not, in the olden days, when I was a boy, we would use workflow rules, and it took a lot of workflow rules to actually do enough field updates. With Process Builder, we can actually do quite a lot within one Process Builder. I like the solution that Vincent gave in the blog article. Another way to do it is to, let's say that you have 10 opportunity stages. Well, you're going to have probably 90 permutations in a Process Builder to, my math isn't perfect there, but if an opportunity goes from stage 1 to 2, that's simple, but what happens when it goes from 1 to 3? What happens when it goes from 1 to 4? We're actually going to want to put multiple date stamps in so that there is no opportunity that has missing stamps. I think Vincent's solution does a nice job using formula fields to do those calculations. So there are a couple of different ways to do it, but essentially what we need is a reliable place that we can count on to see the actual dates, and then we need a way to do the math between the dates. Salesforce gives us stage duration, but it's only for the current stage. So that is something that's available. I think I have it in one of the slides here. Sorry to flip through them so quickly, but not there, not there. I went too far. Where did it go? It was on, oh, here we, no. Opportunity history. Oh, this is it here. So you can see there is a stage duration. So it's just not giving us enough data points to do the math.
All right, this next question, actually, I'll be able to answer. Will this webinar recording be available to share with coworkers that may not have been able to attend? Yes, the recording will be emailed to everyone that attended or registered later this afternoon. The next question is, I'm in the Einstein section of setup, but I'm not able to see opportunity scoring. I wonder if this is because I have Lightning Sync enabled. Could you kindly show your screen again where you're able to run on opportunity scores?
And this is one of those ones that the feature isn't available in a dev org. So short of opening up the OpFocus system and tinkering under the hood, which I'm sure nobody wants me to do, wants me to do live. If we go under setup, Einstein sales, there's an assisted setup. A little bit further down, there's actually an assessment tool at the bottom of the Einstein section. And that assessment tool is really great to see if you're even a good candidate for any of the Einstein tools. I didn't include a screenshot, but it'll say whether you're a good candidate for Einstein forecast scoring and Einstein this and Einstein that. So I really appreciate that they have that there. It's just a little bit off the screen here.
All right, the next question. How good is Einstein opportunity scoring?
Oh, it's as good as your data. And if you have lots and lots of old fields from Siebel and you haven't used Siebel for 15 years, you need to have a history of data, and Salesforce will tell you, sorry, you just don't have enough, you don't have enough history. It'll also, you need enough closed won, enough closed lost. I think having maturity in how you move deals through the stages and having some rigor around opportunities being updated each week will really help. Also, what's interesting is if you have good segmentation, just, sort of not a lot of random fields sitting around, but you have, the regions are clear industries are updated at the account level and whatnot. Just there's sort of like this range of maturity in how data is entered that'll be very helpful.
This question reads, what other cool things can you do with joined reports?
Oh, I think there are some really cool things you can do with joined reports. And you know what? I just got logged out of one system, but I think I left something open here. Okay, so this is one. Let me see if I left one open. Okay, I do have one open here. You could actually do your planning for the year. A lot of us had to do reforecasting recently, and we could look at one opportunities for a particular time period and then look at what we have open and just put those side by side. So basically this is two opportunity reports side by side within a joined report, and I'm grouping it by industry, but I could group it by region. I could group it by owner, and just looking at, in this case, you know, what have we sold versus what's open, and this might be helpful for a reforecasting effort or a validation. Most of us have already done the reforecasting. But.
Awesome. So that was the last of our questions.
Okay.
I do want to thank everyone that attended. Again, this recording will be made available in an email later this afternoon, and we do have a number of upcoming events that we invite you to if you enjoyed this and would like to take part in more. So thank you again, David. It was extremely informational, and I'm sure I'm not alone in saying that I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Look forward to seeing you soon.